Hey everybody, Matt Colville here with a video for players this time. We were playing D&D, and even though the story is going to make us sound like a bunch of infants, we were all adults. We were all well into our 30s when this happened. I was just another player in this game, and another friend of mine at the table wanted to play a gnome character, and I do not remember what the class was. It might have been something like a gnome barbarian. This player had a highly developed notion of what made gnomes cool, and why they wanted to play a gnome, and it didn't really have anything to do with anything written in the player's handbook, and it certainly didn't have anything to do with the way the dungeon master thought about gnomes. That might not have been a problem, except that the dungeon master also had highly developed ideas about gnome culture and gnome personality and what made gnomes cool, and those two ideas did not intersect even a little bit. You would think that this being a table I was a player at, and me being a huge proponent of being responsible adults and talking to each other about your issues, that we would have just resolved this in an adult way. Nothing could be further from the truth. The dungeon master thought the player's gnome character was absurd and behaved like it, and they never stopped either at the table or outside the table to talk about it and try to resolve it. The dungeon master just decided, well, your gnome must have some sort of mental illness, or maybe they're just drunk all the time, and that's why you're behaving the way you are. The player hated this and would object every time the dungeon master said something like this, and would just flat out say, no, that's not my character. And the dungeon master's attitude was, well, it must be your character, otherwise how do you explain your behavior? Please do not make the mistake of thinking that I was somehow above this problem. I was not. This is the kind of thing that I could have done at that time in my life, and I was a player at this table, and I never once suggested that we just talk about it at the table or outside the table and resolve this like grown-ups. The lesson here, apart from we should have behaved like adults and talked about this either at the table or outside the table, the real lesson here is that it is important for the dungeon master to like your character. I cannot overstate how important this is, that the dungeon master be at least a little bit in love with your character and excited to see what was going to happen in the campaign as your character's personality or backstory or even abilities played out. And there's a huge gulf between I am going to decide that your character must be drunk all the time to explain your behavior, and I'm crazy in love with your character and can't wait to see what happens. There's this huge middle ground of basically apathy, where you're happy playing your character and the dungeon master is happy running their game, but the dungeon master isn't really interested in your character qua their personality or backstory or abilities. You're just somebody at the table having fun playing your character, the dungeon master is having fun running their game, and it seems like there's no problem, and for a long time there may be no problem. Eventually, though, if you play long enough, and I don't think it takes that long, that misalignment between why you're playing and why the dungeon master is running is going to come into conflict, because you are going to want more or different things from the game than the dungeon master is providing. The solution to this, or rather one of the solutions, because there are many, is to pitch your character to the dungeon master. Just like I advocate the dungeon master pitching their campaigns to the player. You may remember that before we started this new campaign that's going to launch next week, before we started this new campaign, I sent my players a document. It was 1 page long, and it listed, I think it was 5 different campaigns I was interested in running. There was nothing on that list that I thought wouldn't be cool or fun and that I wasn't ready to dig into, and I just asked them as a group to pick which one they liked the most. I am advocating that you, as a player, do the same thing with your dungeon master, and it doesn't have to be a full page of text with 5 different ideas. It could just be 2 or 3 different ideas, and they could be simply a ancestry and a class. Like, I'm interested in playing a gnome barbarian, and find out what the dungeon master's reaction to that is, because I think if you have 2 or 3 different cool ideas for a character, I guarantee you there is one of them that the dungeon master also thinks is cool. And if you think your character is cool, and the dungeon master thinks your character is cool, then you are both going to have a lot more fun. And I submit, so will everybody else at the table. The process of pitching your campaign to the players or your character to the dungeon master is also the process of figuring out not only what they like, but why. Because the reaction that the dungeon master has to your idea for your character can be very revealing. There may be things about your ancestry or race or background that the dungeon master sees very differently than you do. And if you hadn't brought it up, you would never have known. But having brought it up, the dungeon master may find it very easy to accommodate you. But if you never bring it up, then you never know. And that misalignment just grows over time. I have often found that when people disagree, this is coming from my experience as a video game designer, that when two people wildly disagree on whether or not a feature is going to be fun or implementable, that really what they're disagreeing about is the way they are imagining the feature, not actually whether or not it can be done or would be fun. Many is the time in my video game career that a director on a project pitched an idea and the designers or the programmers objected and said some variation of literally cannot be done. And the director would then, after much arguing, reveal some other game that had done exactly what he was talking about. And the designers or the programmers would go, oh, wait, is that all you want? Is that what you're talking about? Oh, that's easy. Oh, is that what you think is cool about playing a Thri-Kreen paladin? I can get behind that. When you pitched me the idea of it, I thought that's ridiculous. But once we started talking about it, I understood what you liked about that, and it is easy for me to accommodate that. Also, I think pitching more than one character forces you as a player to sort of think outside the box a little bit and not become hyper-focused on one thing or one idea. Kind of the same reason I like having new players. This is not something I do for experienced players. Having new players roll their stats in order so they are discovering their character rather than showing up with some preconceived, rigid, inflexible notions about what they're going to play. Remember, compromise is virtuous, and a big part of that is just having lots of options. The more options you have as a player, the more options you give the dungeon master, the more likely it is that the two of you are going to find something super cool that you're both excited about playing or watching be played. Talk to your dungeon master about the character you're thinking about playing. Show up at the table with a couple of different ideas that are very thinly sketched out. Don't go too far down the road with any one of them, because the farther down the road you go developing a character, the more likely it is that you are the only person who's really going to like this. Whereas the earlier you bring something to the dungeon master, if you can get them on board early, when all you have is an ancestry and a class and maybe a background, maybe a look, maybe a one single hook for who this character is, the easier it will be to onboard the dungeon master. Short video, but I think an important lesson, and one that would have saved my friends and I a lot of headaches 15 years ago when we were playing. That's the video, folks. That's the whole thing. We are getting ready to launch our campaign next week. You'll get a YouTube video telling you when the date and time is and kind of catching you up on what has gone before, so you'll be ready when the players start rolling dice. But I've got a huge list of topics that I want to go into, and not all of them are 30 to 60 minute long epics that require a script. And I felt like this was a good opportunity, considering how busy I am, to get through some of these ideas that are shorter and could be maybe even less than 10 minutes. Ha! This video, along with our office and our careers, is brought to you by Strongholds and Followers, the PDF of which you can purchase right now in the MCDM store. There's a link in the doobly-doo. The reception to Strongholds and Followers was pretty positive. We have a Discord you can come ask questions about, and I believe today, we're supposed to get the first print proofs. So if you come follow me on Twitter, or I think we'll probably do an update, on the Kickstarter when we get these, showing them off, because I am super excited to see the first print product that I will have worked on in, I don't know, is it 20 years? Maybe. It's Monday as we're recording this, and we are almost certainly going to play NetHack tonight. If you haven't been following along, we are getting close to the bottom of the dungeon. We're having an incredible run that we started on Halloween, and Tarna the Valkyrie is now high level and has basically everything she needs to ascend, which is to say beat the game. And on a routine basis, amazing things happen in the game. And plus, it's just a great excuse to hang out and talk. We talk a lot about D&D. People ask me a lot of questions about D&D. It's a lot of fun. We listen to a lot of modular synthwave and stuff like that. We did a live stream on Saturday, world building live stream that I thought went really well and had a great signal to noise ratio. And we learned some important things about capital. And I will probably do another recap video, another short video, just giving you the highlights of what happened and what we learned, so that you don't have to watch the entire thing just to get to the juice, just to get to the good bits. Questions people regularly ask about the stream is, yes, it will be uploaded to YouTube as soon as we can. I think our Twitch agreement, the standard Twitch agreement, prevents us from doing it for 24 or 48 hours. But as soon as we can, you'll be able to watch it on demand on Twitch. It'll be uploaded to YouTube as soon as possible. Yes, we will do campaign diaries, because I know that's one of the things I'm really looking forward to, because I know many of you do not want to watch 3 or 4 hours of people playing D&D, but you want the good bits, you want the narrative, you want the juice, and you want to learn. You want to find out what I learned when I was running, which I think is part of the fun of the stream. So we will have campaign diaries. The videos will be uploaded to YouTube, to this channel on YouTube. We may release them as a podcast, but that's not a priority. It should be relatively simple to do. But of course, you can just get YouTube Red or YouTube Premium or whatever they call it, which allows you to listen to YouTube videos in the background without eating up all your video bandwidth, just like it were a podcast. We will almost certainly do campaign prep videos, but each prep video will come out after its live stream so that you will get the same experience of watching things happen that the players had. The players don't know what I was prepping behind the scenes, and so neither will the audience until after that session. So that way we'll get, I think, depending on how production intensive it is and depending on how much demand there is, you may get 3 videos out of every session. So you have the live session, you have the postmortem / campaign diary, and you've got the prep video. That's a lot of content. Jerry is going to be super busy. That's it, folks. This is probably the last running the game video you're going to get before you get to watch us all play D&D live, which is next week. And like I said, you'll get another video this week saying when the launch date and time is and sort of bringing you up to speed on everything the players know so that when you tune in to watch, you will know what the players know as they sit down to play. Until then, I'll either see you tonight on NetHack. Please come by Twitch and hang out with us, or you'll get the next video will be the announcement video. Until then, peace out.